What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Superhuman Garden YouTube channel. I am your host, Marcus. Now, a lot of you have asked me, more specifically on Facebook, how much money can you save by having a garden? All right, and a lot of you want to know more particular, how much have I saved this year on having a garden? Now, I'm looking at this money.com article that was written in 2016 by Chris Taylor. And it says how gardening can save you $600 on groceries. And for me, because I am a family of five, I am saving way more than that. Now, you also have to factor in that since 2016, overall, groceries have an inflation rate of about, well, nearly 10% since then. So we want to add about 10% on to whatever the number is that I'm going to tell you that I've saved this year. But before we get into that, I'm just going to talk about this highlighted area here on this article. And it reads as so: a well maintained food garden yields a half a pound of produce per square foot per growing season, according to the NGA. So a 600 square foot garden, the American average on which households spend $70 per year, could churn out 300 pounds of fresh produce worth about $600 annually, the association estimates. As a result, you could cut into some hefty grocery bills. The average American household forks out $6,759 a year on food, or 12.6% of total spending, according to the Consumer Expenditure Survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Of that, $756 is spent on fruits and vegetables, and $2,787 of the high cost of eating out. All right, so that kind of gives you a comparison of eating out and, the average of what you can save as far as growing a garden. Now, my garden is obviously way more than 600 square feet. And so, of my nearly an acre land that we're currently living on, I'm using about 4,200 square feet of it to garden, right? So according to this, that means that we're saving about what, 4,200 bucks a year from having a garden. And like I said, we're a family of five, and obviously there's gonna come with some initial startup costs, right? So to be honest with you, as far as startup costs, if you want, you can have a startup cost of less than $100, depending on the route that you go as far as using your land, right? So if you're gonna go with uh the till method, right? So let's say you have a rototiller, you spend less than $100 on it. So there's gas tillers, you have electric tillers, there's battery tillers. Um, if you're gonna go the gas route, you're probably gonna be looking at over 200 bucks for a gas tiller, hand tiller. If you're gonna be going the electric tiller, you can get some for under 150 bucks, and in a lot of cases, you can get some under 100 bucks. All right. So if you just have a tiller, you're gonna use the ground. You know, like I said, even if you don't want to use a tiller and you want to use the old school methods, like the different type of forks and manual tillers, then you can even have a startup cost of under 50 bucks, right? Under 50 bucks. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're not in the greatest of shape, let's say that you don't want to put that amount of time and effort in on your body, and you want to go the route to where you hire someone to till, right? So there's plenty of guys out here that have compact tractors, and they'll come in and till up your land for you for a fee. Typically, this fee is going to be between 50 and 200 bucks, but since gas has gone up, you're probably looking at about 75 to 300 bucks to till apply the land depending on the size of your garden. Now, if you do have a square footage of 600, let's say the average, according to a money.com article here, you're probably looking at about 100 bucks to have that done. Now, I am one of the persons that go around telling for people if this is something they want to do. But I find that a lot of old school gardeners don't really like tilling because they see it as an impact on the earth, right? They look at it as an impact on the earth, and in return for them, they say that it impacts the return and the actual outcome of their produce on their land, right? So it just kind of depends on which route you want to go. Now, if you are living in an apartment, it's probably gonna cost you. Well, it just depends on the size that you're trying to have. So if you're looking at a typical 5 gallon bucket, that can cost you probably $3 or more. And I know a lot of you aren't fans of Walmart, but can get you a 5 gallon bucket, and in this 5 gallon bucket, you can grow a couple of peppers. In a 5 gallon bucket, you can grow one collard, green plant. You can grow two kale plants in a bucket. You can grow four Swiss chard plants in a 5 gallon bucket. Um, as it relates to what you're gonna pay as far as compost, you're gonna be looking at, and I mean it depends on what kind of compost you get, but you're looking at maybe about 5 to 12 bucks for a bag of compost, and that's obviously gonna depend on the size of the bag that you're gonna have, right? So then you also have to factor in the seeds that you're gonna buy, right? So overall, I would say for a patio garden, you're gonna be looking at about 50 to 100 bucks, depending on the size of the garden, right? So, I would say the most expensive form of garden is probably gonna come with a raised bed, right? So raised beds, you're gonna factor in the wood, right? So if you're gonna go the wood route, initially the startup cost, depending on again the size that you want to go with, you got to think about the size of wood. Now you're gonna be looking at about 50 bucks just on the wood. Now when you're thinking about the compost, maybe add on another 50 bucks or so, right? But the only problem that I have with wood as it pertains to raised beds is the wood is going to eventually rot out within maybe 4 to 5 years. So I don't know if that's sufficient. Now, if you're going with that wood that's treated, it may give you a few more years, but eventually that's going to rot out as well. So the most efficient form of high beds that I've experienced myself are going to be the cinder blocks, right? Cinder blocks are going to last forever, and even if one block goes out, it gets cracked. You're only going to spend maybe a little under $2 to replace one per cinder block, right? So maybe you want to look into that. As far as raised beds go, when you think about using metaling like aluminum, eventually those are going to rot out too. They'll probably last a little bit longer than the wood, but eventually those are going to rot out as well. So now, for me, right, we're a family of five, and in the long run, let's say we were to stay in this same house, which I'm gonna give you guys a little secret. We're gonna be moving again soon. Need a little bit more house space, and we weren't able to get people or contractors to add on for us. It's just a big mess in the real estate game right now, but that's another story. in itself. So let's say with this $4,200 that we saved this year, right? So eventually we're gonna have grandkids and all of that, and we'll probably have to factor in the fact that although our kids will move out one day, inflation is gonna continue to go up, right? So I'm gonna just say, even if we were to stay at this same 4,200 a year that we save, right? And let's say the next house we're gonna be in there for 30 years, assuming Lord willing that we live to be in our 70s, right? So I'm gonna just say for 35 years times that 4,200, we're looking at $147,000 if we were to continue to save 4,200 a year on groceries, right? So $140,000, if you put that into a 401k, is gonna, what I mean, it's gonna save you millions of dollars in the long run, especially as things start to inflate, especially as your investments start to increase. So that's what we're looking at. So I hope you found this video useful. So again, if you're a person and maybe it's two of you, you probably could save, a couple $1,000s a year. Now again, there are gonna be some startup costs depending on how you want to do it. For me, I have raised beds. I have 5-gallon buckets everywhere. I've got 20-gallon buckets. I plant mostly directly into the ground. So it just depends on the methods you want to use and what you have available for where you live at. All right. So again, startup costs aren't that much. Also, a lot of people like to grow gardens because they know, there aren't any chemicals, or if you do use chemicals to fight off pests, you know what chemicals you use, right? You know if they're cancerous or not. You know everything about your garden. You know what kind of fertilizer you use, if you use fertilizer. Um, and that's just it. I know a lot of people don't like to use canned foods. I'm not really a canned foods kind of guy, but if if it hits the fan, the word before it hits the fan, then obviously I'd have no other choice but to go with the canned foods, right? Because in a survival situation, that's what you're gonna go with. You're gonna go with that canned food. But overall, again, people like to have fun growing the garden. Some people are just enthusiasts. Some people are serious about what they put in their bodies, and some people like to save money. So no matter what your reason is for growing the garden, I hope it all works out for you guys. If you guys have any questions, shoot me a message. And until next time, signing out, guys. Hope you guys get something out of this.